Hi guys, Ultra Maximus here, and I got a new series of videos that I'm going to put out. I was thinking about this and I was watching some other YouTube videos, and they were about like top comic book villains, heroes, most powerful, the strongest, the worst, etc, etc, etc. And then another guy I watch on YouTube, he was doing some videos on Soundwave, and he was doing a different Soundwave figure, and I kind of like that series thing. And as a lot of you know, I am a huge movie buff. I do a lot of 3D movie reviews, and I thought, you know what, I want to sit down and walk through each one of my favorite movies in genre. So I'm going to do a top 10 of my favorite movies of a particular genre: horror, comedy, sci-fi, fantasy, romance, war, western, etc, etc. So each group, and then I'm going to take the number one of each of those and then count them all down at the end. So without further ado, let's get it kicked off, and we're going to start it off with horror movies. So the top 10 horror movies. And when I say that, the only reason I'm saying it is because they're movies I like and why they are my top 10. Not because they were the biggest box office draw or the best special effects or whatever. It's my top 10 and why. So here they are, and I hope you enjoy it. At number 10, we have Cabin Fever. Now, I really like this movie. Looking at the poster here, really like the fact we've got the skull in the background here, and it's out in the woods, and we get the tagline, "Catch it." And this movie was really good to me because it was gory, it was gross, and it was very much in the style of Hitchcock. And when I say that, what I mean is, in the old Hitchcock movies, he liked to show you, he was famous for saying that if there's a bomb in the room, show the audience. Don't let the characters know, the protagonist shouldn't know there's a bomb, but the audience should, and that should build up the suspense, and that's what makes a good horror movie. And that's what they've done with Cabin Fever. We see the chemicals, we see, you know, not necessarily the chemicals until the end, but we see the dog that's got the disease, and we see this disease spreading, so we know it's happening, and the main characters have no clue what's going on until it actually starts to go, and then things go downhill, and they just did a fantastic job with this movie. And it just, to this day, the scene where the girl is shaving and shaves off her skin creeps me out, and the scene with the girl in the barn when they roll her over and she's still alive and her face is half eaten away, just so creepy. This is a great horror movie, a disease movie, and just fun horror romp. And what's great about the DVD, if you don't have the DVD, it has girl vision on it, which is a feature. So every time something scary happens, these two hands come up over the screen and block what's going on, which is very humorous. So number 10, Cabin Fever. At number 9, I've got The Serpent and the Rainbow, which is a classic 80s. It's a 1988 film directed by Wes Craven and starred Bill Pullman. Love the poster, looking at the movie poster. Big movie, I collect movie posters, so I wanted to put a lot of these in here. And if you're getting into the hobby of collecting vintage, authentic movie posters, the lines and folds, if you notice in this picture, you see the creases, the lines and the folds indicate that's an authentic poster, because they didn't start rolling those posters until the 90s. So if your 80s and older posters don't have fold creases in them, they're not authentic. Odds are. At any rate, back to the movie. Love this movie. This was this was the first horror movie I went to see by myself as a kid, and loved it. And what I like about this movie, it's based off the novel of the same name. But what's great about this film, it's so scary because it's more realistic than other horror movies. The horror is not some supernatural monster or a lot of gore and things like that. What it's about is Bill Pullman's character works for a pharmaceutical company, goes down to Haiti to look for some kind of drug being used by witch doctors and voodoo black magic, and they're creating voodoo zombie slaves, essentially. And he gets involved in some underworld things going on down there and with these slaves, and lots of control and stuff. And that's what makes it a great movie, is the fact that it's very creepy because they're human living voodoo zombies, mind control and zombified, and it's almost too close to home to being real is what makes it scary. So that's why it hits my top 10. At number 8, we have The Fly, with the tagline, "Be afraid, be very afraid." Great movie. I remember this from the 80s too. This was a classic horror movie. It's a remake of the Vincent Price film, and this is much scarier. It's a little more sci-fi. Jeff Goldblum is trying to develop a teleporter, a transportation device, and he gets mixed up with a fly, and the computer doesn't know what to do, and it just combines them both, and it kind of goes through the process of him turning into this giant, gross fly creature. And it just creeped me out as a kid, him just falling apart genetically and turning into this fly and this hybrid monster, and you know, the fear of her being pregnant with the kid, and that's going to have some kind of genetic effect on the child. And then it really kind of ends up becoming a very sad story at the end, when he ends up, you know, kill me, please kill me kind of thing. At the end of his mad, I'm going to combine all of us together and one giant genetic thing, and he just totally lost his mind, and at the end he realized what was going on, and he was half crippled and dead anyway. And it ends up being a very, very tearful movie at the end, and I can't really think of many horror movies that end so sadly that way. So that was definitely something different as far as horror movies that stuck out to me, so that's why it's in the top 10. At number 7, we have Clive Barker, one of the master of horrors, Hellraiser. Great film. It is all about gore and creepiness, and essentially what this film is about is this puzzle box game thing that if you open it right, it unlocks the doors to hell, and these Cenobites, these demon-like creatures that are designed nothing but to torture and kill you, come out and attack you. Great movie. Probably a classic 80s gore fest type of flick that really, just really creepy, and it kind of, I don't know, had this occult feel, these demons and this bloodlust and all the different types of Cenobites that were, and you know how they had these pins and blades and their skin was messed up, and they were almost like hellish cyborgs or something. It was just absolutely a great flick. As a kid, this is something we watched on weekends, late nights, that kind of stuff. Great stuff. All right, number 6, A Nightmare on Elm Street, the original Nightmare on Elm Street. The tagline on the poster, "If Nancy doesn't wake up screaming, she won't wake up at all." Such a great movie. Another 1980s flick, directed by Wes Craven. And this is the supernatural slasher flick. This kind of crosses the Hellraiser type of supernatural, demonish characters with the slasher films of like Halloween and of Friday the 13th. And it does it very well. If you go back and look, it's a little bit corny in certain scenes, but in the day, this was it. This was another one of those weekend stay-all-nighter movies that you watched. You watched at Halloween. It was just a really great 80s horror film. Freddy with his knives, he would come at you in the dreams, and we really didn't have anything like that before. So it was a very original horror movie, and you really didn't want to go to sleep, and that was a big thing, man. Little kids in the dark and sleeping, and somebody that would come and get you in your dreams, you didn't want to go to sleep, and it really accomplished that. So absolutely great, creepy, scary keep your lights on kind of horror movie. All right, rounding into the top 5, we've got Friday the 13th. Love this movie. With the tagline, "They were warned, they were doomed, and on Friday the 13th, nothing will save them." And then we have a subtag of "A 24-hour nightmare of terror." And this is a great film. Another great slasher movie from the 80s. We had so many good horror movies in the 80s. And this one I really liked because it wasn't another one of those big supernatural type of movies at the beginning of the series. I mean, eventually Jason kind of becomes a supernatural slasher with a machete, but it started out totally different. It was a ghost story around the campground where they would tell a story about Jason Voorhees drowning and then come back and kill campers. Then it starts happening. But it turns out to be a very Hitchcockian-like story in the fact that it's his mother that's doing the killing and she's doing it for revenge. So it's kind of a reverse of Psycho, which was awesome. But then at the end, of course, Jason comes back and it kind of gives you that extra, thing going on there. But absolute great movie in those aspects. At number 4, we've got the Steven Spielberg classic, Jaws. This is the original summer blockbuster. With the tagline, "The terrifying monster picture from the terrifying #1 bestseller." So this is based off of the novel Jaws, and Steven Spielberg brought it to life. Of course, now we look and some of the shark scenes are a little hokey, but it wasn't about the shark. It was that buildup of the shark. Again, we're going back to Hitchcockian style horror, okay? Things that scare you. Yes, there's a big shark out there. We see it kill people. We see it every now and then. And they use a lot of camera tricks and movements, and you think it's the shark, but it's not. And that's another trick that Hitchcock used all the time. You think this is going to happen, then nope, it's not it. And just suspension, build up, build up, build up, and then you never know when it's going to happen until at the end, boom, there it is, and we get our shark. So that's why it's a classic. It uses classic tactics to scare you and build up that suspension. And of course, the first big blockbuster. How many people didn't want to go into the water for how many years after they saw it in the theater, they saw it in video? This movie scared generations of people. Okay, number 3 is a remake movie, The Dawn of the Dead. And a lot of zombie fans probably are going to throw Rotten Tomatoes at me for this, but here's my reason that I like this film. I've seen a lot of zombie movies, all of the Romero films and all the different knockoff Romero zombie movies, and I'm going to tell you, zombies they're slow, they're dumb, they're not that scary to me. They never were. They seem more of an obstruction than a monster until this movie came out, and this really reinvented zombies again for a new generation and a new era of zombie films. They were fast, they were quick, and they were vicious. It was awesome. And they start out kind of lumbering and slow until they see a prey item and just go right to town on it. And this is a great horror movie in the fact that in zombie movie that they just appear. One day, boom, they're there. We don't know why. We don't know where they came from. They're there. They've destroyed society, and people are just trying to survive. And that's what makes a good zombie movie. So they reinvented it, and without this film, we wouldn't have like The Walking Dead and all these other zombie-type movies we have today if it wasn't for this remake. So, outstanding job on reinventing and bringing, I would say, life back into zombie flicks, but probably more of unlife, right? Ha 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 ha. So there you go. Number 3, Dawn of the Dead. At number 2, we have the classic original Halloween, John Carpenter's masterpiece, The Night He Came Home. And what I love about this movie, again, we go back to the Hitchcock style. It's just a scary guy with a knife. This is before, again, he becomes some kind of supernatural-like entity with a knife coming back from the dead all the time as the series progresses. He's just a guy. He's insane. He killed his family, and he's come back, and he's terrorizing the neighborhood that he grew up in. And fantastic job, Jamie Lee Curtis. We get to see her in the film, and they do a great job with it. You always see him in the corner around the back. It goes back to Hitchcock. The audience can see him, but the characters cannot, and that's what builds up that suspense. And that music, that is probably the creepiest music ever scored for a horror movie. I don't think there are 3 horror movies that I can think of to name the music: the Friday the 13th music, the Jaws music, and Halloween. And by far, this score beats it flat out. You hear that, you think of Halloween, you think of scary. And that just helped set the tone for this film to become one of the best horror movies of all times, hands down. And at number 1, we have the ultimate ghost story, Poltergeist. Another 80s classic. Brought to us by Steven Spielberg. He helped write it, he produced it, he helped direct it. He didn't direct the whole thing. Just a masterpiece in filmmaking. So scary. If you've never seen it, it's a shame, a crime if you've never seen this movie, where a development company has built this housing addition on a graveyard, just moves the tombstones, leaves the bodies, and then the ghosts start haunting these people because they're essentially trespassing on their eternal rest. And it's just fantastic. The effects are amazing, and the family essentially has a paranormal team come in and investigate what's going on. The little girl's kidnapped and sucked into the TV, you know, that the whole tagline, "They're here." So creepy. Every time you hear that, you think this movie, you know, it knows what scares you. The tagline of the film, fantastic. When Craig T. Nelson does such a great job in the movie, along with the other actors. Zelda Rubinstein, the little psychic, she's just a classic figure in Hollywood. And the little girl, Heather O'Rourke, she did such a great job, and it's a shame that she passed away right after the making of the 3rd one, because I would love to have seen what she would have grown up and done. Fortunately, at least, we have this great piece of cinema that generations are going to remember her for, and it's just a fantastic film. When they play it in theaters around Halloween time every so many years, it's just one you want to go see, just to see the room with all the toys flying around, the Star Wars toys, a nice little nod to George Lucas from Spielberg, and you know, that tree and the clown. And another great little fact about this movie is in the scene where the mom's in the pool and the skeletons come up, those are real skeletons, because it was cheaper in the 80s to import in skeletons, human skeletons, from India than it was to have plastic ones made at the time. So they would get these real skeletons, add prosthetics to them, and that's what they used. And those screams she's yelling out are real because they're real skeletons, and she didn't like it at all. So, fantastic film. Probably the best horror movie to come out of the 80s. I can't say anything more than that. So, there it is. There's my top 10 horror movies. I hope you guys like it. What are your top horror movies? Do a video, leave some comments, subscribe, keep an eye out for my other videos. I'll be posting them soon. Thanks for watching, guys.